Welcome, everyone, to our regular weekday morning podcast on Kabbalah for Heretics with me, your heretic in chief, Yakov, Leib, HaKohain. It's good to see you all there in the listening audience. Let's continue with where we left off in our last podcast, which actually is in volume 4 of the Zohar. Just for those of you who may be newcomers, for the past 30 some years, literally, every weekday morning, with some very rare exceptions, we have been studying the Zohar in this podcast, volume by volume, section by section, page by page, and sentence by sentence. And in doing that, we have finished volumes 1, 2, and 3. It's taken us so far almost 30 years. Really, I know it sounds hard to believe, but it's true. And we are very close to finishing volume 4. I mean, really close. And according to my doctor's visit, please God, I'll have enough life to continue into volume 5, the final volume of the Zohar. So, with that in mind, let's get back to where we left off. Rabbi Yitzchak took the verse, which did eat the fat of their sacrifices and drink the wine of their drink offering. That's a direct quote from Leviticus. And as you know, what the Zohar does is it provides a scriptural quote from written Torah and then unpacks all of the hidden esoteric meaning that was intentionally provided in that written version. He said, happy are Israel in that they are holy, and God desired to sanctify them. Let me point something out. Happy are Israel, the community of Israel, as they are holy. They are holy. The individual Jew is not necessarily holy, and in my experience, rarely is. Me, for example, I'm hardly holy. I'm not. But collectively, the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, that underplays the vast community of Israel, that is holy. It is a holy spiritual nation. Jesus says salvation comes from the Jews. This doesn't mean that salvation comes from every single Jew. Hardly. Most Jews do not live up to the holiness of the spiritual commune in which they find themselves. They don't. But that does not mean that the spiritual commune is not itself collectively holy. Israel, the community of Israel, both born and adopted, transform everything that they are in. It just does. Well, the Middle East, look at the terrible things that they're doing there to the Arabs. Well, first of all, I'm not sure that we understand fully what's being done in Israel, in the land of Israel. I think that what we're told is filtered through just this enormous archetypal anti-Semitism, and it's archetypal. The Jew, the community of Israel is intended to suffer. And indeed it does, as it is right now in Israel, the land of Israel. Oh, look at all the terrible things that they've done over history, the Rothschilds and all that. That, again, my friends, is a untruth filtered as a truth by this archetypal anti-Semitism that has followed us Jews for the entirety of our history, ever since God proclaimed us a holy nation unto him, a nation meant to bring salvation to the Gentile. That doesn't mean the Christian, it means the Gentile, all non-Jews. Gentile simply means non-Jew, biologically. God says to Israel when he blesses her, "Be thou a light unto the Gentile." He's not screwing around. He's not saying if or maybe. God is saying to the community of Israel, both by birth and adoption, "Be thou a light unto the Gentile." And for that we are persecuted historically, always. People do not want to have a light unto them. The ego does not want to have a light unto it. So we see in the verse that we're reading from the Zohar, he said, God said, "Happy are Israel in that they are holy." And God desired to sanctify them. I don't give a damn what your anti-Semitic, Jew-hating member next door tells you. I don't give a damn what the world says. It's easy to ignore the millennial anti-Semitism of the world if you're not a Jew. But here it is saying that the Jewish people, both by birth and adoption, were desired to be sanctified by God, and God made them uniquely holy as a community, not as individuals. Mr. Ginsburg, your next door neighbor, is probably anything but holy. He's just a regular, ordinary screw-up, even though he's a Jew. But collectively, the Jewish people are a holy force in the world. You see that in history. You see that in Isaiah. It says, "Where are they now, those enemies of yours, O Israel? They are gone and forgotten, but you remain." Everywhere the Jew is planted, civilization has grown up. Of course, countered ultimately by the anti-Semitism that is archetypally in the world. God says to the Jews, "Those who bless you I will bless, and those who curse you I will curse." And indeed, we see that. Now, I know that I'm probably losing a number of you in the listening audience right now, where you're saying, "Oh, that typical Jew. Listen to that typical Jew, that chauvinistic Jew bragging about being chosen, etc." I am not bragging about being chosen. God tells us we are chosen. The Quran acknowledges, for example, that the Jew is a chosen nation. It goes on to say, so you better live up to it, but there's nothing wrong with that. Carl Jung acknowledges that the Jew is chosen. The nation of Israel is chosen. And he said that has been a hard psychic task for us over all these millennia, and it has been. The Zohar goes on, all the life of this world that the Jew inherits is derived from the world to come, because that is life both above and below. and the place where the, quote, treasured wine, unquote, commences, and from which life and holiness issue. And Israel uses wine on account of the wine of another Israel, for the supernal Israel derives life therefrom, and therefore they bless the Holy One with wine. As it said, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagofen, the blessing over wine. Now, first of all, why is the Zohar dwelling on this? And what relevance does it have for us today? The Zohar is not saying that the people of Israel once were holy. It's not saying that the people of Israel once were a light unto the Gentiles. We still are. The problem is, those of you listening who may be Jews by birth, for the most part, we Jews by birth are not living up to it. We are in many ways exactly what our enemies accuse us of being. We are in many ways chauvinistic, arrogant, unconcerned with anybody except the Jew. That's not living up to it. We are not a light unto the Gentile. We quite intentionally stop ourselves from being as a large group. That must be corrected. The light of God must be reignited in the Jew by birth. Reignited. That's the present. And for the Gentile, those of you listening who are Gentiles, it tells you the value of attaching yourself, as Ruth did, to the community of Israel. Remember, she says to her mother-in-law, whether thou goest, I will go, and whither thou stayest, I will stay. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. There is still value in that, and it is that value that we study and pore over in the Zohar and in Scripture here in these podcasts. There are ways that that is acknowledged by Gentiles, but almost always acknowledged as a kind of joke. Get yourself a good Jewish lawyer. Get yourself a good Jewish doctor. That's not really acknowledging the holiness of the people of Israel. That is, in fact, making light of it. But it is acknowledging it in a certain way. You're all guilty of that, and you know it. I venture to say most of you listening to me now are offended or confused or angry by what is being said here. That has been the case for 4,000 years. God's commandment that the Jew be a light unto the Gentile, just as I am being now. What the hell do you think I'm doing all this for? I'm following the commandment of God. Just as the light of God has been ignited, reignited in me, so too I pray to God that I am reigniting it in you. It is not arrogant, it is not chauvinistic to see our role as the salvation of the world, often by our physical presence. Those who bless you I will bless, and those who curse you I will curse. Look at the nations of the world. You can see that there is almost an exact positive correlation between the success of nations and the degree to which they have blessed the Jew. Look at the United States, this country. It has blessed the Jew as no other nation in the world has. There has never been institutional anti-Semitism. There have never been laws regulating the Jews in this country. We have succeeded wonderfully in this country, and this country has succeeded wonderfully because of us. Those who bless you I will bless, and those who curse you I will curse. Look at the nations who cursed us. Germany cursed us, and look what happened to her. Now, she has recovered immensely, of course, thank God. But that was not so at first. The odd thing is that the Japanese, if you know anything about what is called the Fugu experiment during the war, actually blessed the Jews. They took in, they did read, there's a book called the Fugu experiment, and just look it up on the internet. And so Japan did not suffer defeat for as long as Germany did. They blessed us, and so in turn we're blessed. All the life of this world that Israel inherits is derived from the world to come, because that is life both above and below, and the place where the, quote, treasured wine, unquote, commences, and from which life and holiness issue. Wherever the Jew is, if they are blessed, they prosper to the degree, that nation prospers to the degree that it has blessed the Jew. I know it sounds very chauvinistic to point out this country, but I think it's appropriate. I think it's appropriate. In fact, I think this country is the remnant of Israel that has been sent to live in a land of peace before the Messiah comes. Hence, when the idolater, who is unclean and defiles anyone who associates with him, touches the wine of Israel, it becomes unclean and is forbidden. Now, you'll remember, I talked about this, that there is kosher wine, and a special kind of kosher wine to boot, and that is wine that the grower can guarantee that at no time in its development, from plant to wine, has it been touched by a Gentile. Now, that sounds chauvinistic. It is not. Until the Gentile is saved by the Jew, just as Jesus said he should be, he contaminates everything he touches. Hence, when the idolater, not just any old person, but not just any old Gentile, but the idolater who is unclean and defiles anyone who associates with him, touches the wine of Israel, it becomes unclean and is forbidden. All the more the wine which he himself, God, makes. Now listen, this is why Israel is so holy. All the practices of Israel are on the supernal pattern, and especially their offering of wine, which holds a very high rank, like the, quote, treasured wine. If you're a born Jew, or if you know born Jews and have lived among them, wine is so sacred. Hence Israel drinks the wine of Israel, which has been made in holiness, as is fitting, just as the Israel above drinks of that holy wine, and they do not drink wine which has been made in defilement and from the side of defilement. For the spirit of uncleanliness, the sitra achra, the left-hand side, rests upon it, and if one drinks it, his spirit is defiled, and he is not of the side of Israel, and has no share in the world to come. I understand that this is very uncomfortable for many people. It is uncomfortable for many Jews who deal with it by denying it and poo-pooing it. But it's uncomfortable for most Gentiles. It's interpreted by Gentiles to mean that Israel thinks itself better than everyone. That is not what God said. That is not what the Zohar says. And that is not, certainly, what I am saying. I'm told that there are some nations where soccer teams are very, very firm in being sure that there is at least one Jew on their team. For example, hence God is blessed with wine above, because wine rejoices the left-hand side, cleans it, and in that rejoicing merges itself in the right. And when the whole becomes right side, the holy name is glad, and blessings are everywhere diffused. What does this have to do with now? When we, for example, drink wine, we should, among other things, particularly drink it with the kavanah, the intent of reunifying the two sides of God, virtually, in the mind's eye. You're not just drinking wine. You're reunifying the left side of God with the right side of God. Every day, whenever you bless anything, not just wine, if you do it with the proper kavanah, if you do it with the proper theurgy, which doesn't mean according to the Jewish religion, it doesn't mean that. It has nothing to do with the Jewish religion. It has to do with the theurgical processes of the mind. Whenever you do anything, whenever you sharpen a pencil, which very few people do anymore, you are virtually releasing the sparks of holiness that are in that pencil and lifting them up in your mind's eye to be reunited to their source. Whenever you drink a cup of coffee, you are releasing the sparks of holiness in that coffee and raising them back up to God, where they become reunited with Him. Everything we do, everything we touch is a sacrament, and that's not just the Jews. That is what we Jews are put on earth to teach the Gentiles. That is what God means when He says, "Be thou a light unto the Gentile." It's not bragging. It's being a light unto the Gentile. We'll continue with this tomorrow morning. Right now, we'll stop here. Let me mark my place. And we will, as I say, resume tomorrow morning. Do either Yeshai or David, do either of you have a comment or a question? Raise your hand if you do. All right, Yeshai, go ahead. David, go ahead. Waiting for Yeshai and David to ask questions or make comments that will reflect, perhaps, the comments and questions of many of you in the listening audience. That's good. We do not, as you know by now, we do not invite students to come to these. These are not classes. These are podcasts, recordings of podcasts that are then made public on our YouTube channel. But during the actual recordings, people are not invited. But Yeshai and David are always here because they are, as it were, the recording technicians. All right, David, if you'll pardon my rough summarizing notes. Happy are Israel as in that they are holy and that God desired to sanctify them. God did. Individually, they are not necessarily holy, but as a community of Israel, they were made holy and make others holy. The community of Israel is intended to suffer. They are accused with anti-Semitic tropes, suffering under continual lies and accusations, and they suffer while existing to be a light unto the Gentiles. Those who bless you I will bless, and those who curse you I will curse. The light of God must be reignited in the Jew by birth. The Zohar tells us the Gentile, the value of attaching yourself to the Jew as Ruth did. Hence, when the idolater who is unclean and contaminates all those he comes in contact with touches the wine of Israel, it becomes unclean. Hence, Israel drinks the wine of Israel, and they do not drink wine that comes from unholiness. That's just terrific, David. There's nothing to excuse. That's just wonderful. A wonderful, accurate, knowing summary of what this morning's shir was. Thank you, David. Yeshai, go ahead. There's Yeshai. Powerful, says Yeshai. The community of Israel is holy, not necessarily the individual, but the collective community. They are to live up to being a light unto all non-Jews and are to reignite that light in the Jew themselves. But the ego does not want any light being out unto itself. Archetypal Jew hatred denies the role or minimizes it in a joke, but it must be done. It is God's command. Theurgy, not religion. Raising God back to itself. Baruch Hashem. Oh, beautiful. Thank you, Yeshai. Wonderful. Just wonderful. All right, now as we do every morning at the conclusion of our podcast, I recite the Holy Kaddish, the ritual prayer for the dead, in honor of the memory of our beloved dear friend and fellow Kohen, Leonard Cohen. May his name be a blessing. Yiskadal v'yiskadash me'rabo, b'omo divro chirusei v'yamlich machusei, b'chaychonav yomechonav chayei d'chal beis Yisrael, b'galo uvizman korei v'mu amen, yehei shmei rabo mevarach le'olam u'me'omaya, Yisparach v'yishtabach v'yispar v'yisamav, v'yisnasei v'yisadar v'yisalei v'yisalal, shmei d'kutsha b'reichu, le'olam minchal b'irachasa v'shirasa tushvechasa v'nechamasa, damiran b'mo v'mu amen. Yehei shlomo rabba min shemaya, v'chayinu aleinu v'yakol Yisrael v'mu amen. Osei shalom b'mramov, hu ya'asei shalom, aleinu v'yakol Yisrael v'mu amen. And please everyone say amen. Baruch Hashem. Thank you. Well, God willing, I'll have another day of life tomorrow, and so we will continue tomorrow where we just left off in